In Chapter 2, we begin to use the FASB codification research system to answer some accounting questions. So we're going to start in this chapter really just learning the basics of how to search the codification. That's going to mean exploring how the codification is organized, and in this video just to sort of talk you through what you find in the accounting standards codification. So there are a number of learning objectives to Chapter 2. This particular video is going to focus just on the first three: the role of the codification, what's authoritative versus non-authoritative, and the standard setters who've contributed to the current body of authoritative guidance. So what is the codification? How it's organized is the topic of a separate video. This is just the opening page of the Accounting Standards Codification. When you enter it, you will be seeing this particular page a lot as we move through the semester. The FASB took on a major initiative to organize GAAP by topic, which was finally completed in 2009. Prior to that time, the GAAP was organized by individual standards. You had to know which standard to look for, so they were just, the standards were numbered sequentially or chronologically as they were issued. And there was always a possibility that a portion of the standard you were reading had been superseded by a later standard, but there was no way in the earlier standard to note those changes. The codification was an attempt to put everything in one place and to organize GAAP from a variety of sources by topic. The idea is that this would simplify research. It is considered authoritative for non-governmental entities, which means both public and private or non-public companies. As noted in Chapter 1, private companies have long felt the FASB was more concerned in developing standards appropriate for publicly traded companies. That's where there's more demand for accounting guidance, if there can be demand for accounting standards. Now we have the Private Company Council, which is working with, it's part of the FASB, working with the main board to come up with some, or to identify areas where GAAP could be simplified for private companies while still ensuring that financial reports provide all relevant information. Again, this is relatively new, so we're not in a place right now where we have separate standards for private and public companies. There's really only goodwill. There's a difference now between what private companies follow and public companies. And by the way, a private company could always follow what is GAAP for public companies. It's just that there may be some areas where they could do something a little more simply. As a private entity, the FASB has no direct enforcement powers, and it's always a problem if you have the rulemaker having no authority to enforce or demand compliance with the rules. The authority the FASB has is essentially delegated from two sources: the SEC, which has designated the FASB as the private sector body, check my typo there, private sector body with authority to establish GAAP, and the AICPA Code of Conduct Rule 203-2. AICPA recognizes the FASB as the organization with the authority to establish GAAP for non-governmental entities, which means an auditor cannot issue an unqualified opinion on financial statements that contain a material deviation from GAAP. In the U.S., a company can't advance a conceptual argument that they've come up with a better way of accounting for a transaction than what is prescribed in GAAP. Well, they could make the argument, but they would not be able to get a clean, unqualified audit opinion. The FASB used its derived authority to designate the Accounting Standards Codification as the sole source of authoritative GAAP. So that's where we look for generally accepted accounting principles when we're looking for authoritative guidance. When the codification was finally published in 2009, it represented a compilation of all of the current effective guidance from various sources. So we had the current FASB statements. Those statements were the primary means by which GAAP was promulgated by the FASB. There were also interpretations, technical bulletins, staff positions, and staff implementation guidance. The codification also includes any guidance of the Committee on Accounting Procedure and Accounting Principles Board, any of those statements that were still in effect, abstracts of the Emerging Issues Task Force, issues by the Derivatives Implementation Group. Derivatives are a land unto themselves. And also AICPA statements of position, accounting interpretations, practice bulletins, audit, and accounting guides. So all those materials were previously standalone. You had search sheets separately. Now they're integrated. The original standards were superseded when the codification became effective. In other words, they were all folded into the codification. And that's what we cite is rather than the original pronouncements, you would want to cite where these things are located in the codification. If you really want to know more about the FASB Accounting Standards Codification, I've posted a link to this document, FASB's document about the codification. It's also accessible through the codification if you just go to the About tab and sort of follow the clicks, you'll get to it, and it tells in more detail about not only the how the codification was established and also what the parameters are of the codification. So accounting standards are continually changing. The FASB always has topics on their agenda. Sometimes it takes them a while, but they will issue new standards. So when, as necessary, the FASB will review and revise the content in the codification. The updates are called accounting standards updates. And we go over the process for issuing accounting standards updates in Chapter 13. Accounting standards updates are not authoritative in their own right. They're changes that will be made within the codifications. These essentially are new standards. The FASB has approved them, they just haven't folded them into the codification. This is the same slide I showed previously. I don't know how clearly you can read it, but the opening page of the codification will highlight, for example, proposed accounting standards update on derivatives, and let's see, and two more, one on income taxes, intra-entity and transfers, balance sheet classification of deferred taxes. In addition, they have some updates that have not yet been put into the codification. For example, one on extraordinary and unusual items, eliminating the extraordinary items classification, and then there's one on consolidation. And typically these have not, they tell you what topic they're going to go into, and typically these have been passed, but they have not been put into effect yet. There's usually a transition period. If you're searching for the relevant topic within the codification and there is an accounting standards update, you will get a directive. You will be directed to the accounting standards update so that you know that whatever you're looking at, that the accounting standards are changing. The codification does include some SEC content, not all, but some. Remember that SEC guidance is only authoritative for public companies, but non-public companies may find it helpful. If you completed the Chapter 1 Exercise 7 assignment, you will have visited the SEC website and looked at some material there. Certain guidance, however, is included in the codification. It's identified with an S preceding the section number. So the regulation SX, which is the major guidance for publicly traded companies, their financial reporting releases, interpretive releases, staff accounting bulletins, these are all SEC accounting guidance. Again, Not all SEC content has been incorporated into the codification, so there may be times when you do need to go to www.sec.gov and related accounting research databases. Again, if you go to the SEC website, click the regulation tab, you'll get a link to the various SEC documents. I didn't include it in here, but if you scroll down further, there is a section, information for accountants, and if you push on accountants, you will also get links to various sources that accountants can refer to for guidance within the SEC webpage. They've just put all the links together in one place. So that concludes a quick overview of what kind of materials you can find in the codification. Next topic is to figure out how to get into the codification and begin to research what you need to know.